Welcome to Animal Rescues, Our Stories. Here, we share incredible animal rescues. Subscribe so you don't miss these heartwarming tales. It was just an ordinary Tuesday, or at least it seemed that way at the time. The sun was shining, not too hot, not too cold. And everything in my little neighborhood felt like it was going on as usual. I was coming home from work, tired but not exhausted, thinking about nothing in particular, just the usual mental checklist of things to do. Maybe I'd make some tea, watch a show, read a book. Nothing that would prepare me for what was about to happen. As I turned the corner near the park, I saw him. He was standing by the side of the road, looking lost. A dog, probably no older than a year or so, with a sleek black coat and a white patch on his chest. He was staring at the passing cars, his tail slightly tucked, as though unsure of what to do next. He didn't belong there. Not in that moment, not on that busy street. His eyes locked onto mine as I got closer, and for a moment, time seemed to stretch out. I could feel my heart start to race. It wasn't that I was a huge dog lover. I liked animals, but I wasn't the kind of person who would stop everything to help one. But something about him, standing there alone, vulnerable, just broke something in me. I pulled over to the curb and got out of the car slowly, not wanting to startle him. My mind raced. Was he lost? Or worse, was he abandoned? I crouched down to his level and spoke softly, hoping he would trust me. "Hey there, little guy. Are you okay?" He didn't flinch, didn't run away. His eyes were wide, scanning my face, and then, after a beat, he took a hesitant step forward. I could see the hunger in his eyes. Hunger for something more than just food, something like reassurance or comfort. But I didn't know if I could give that to him. I reached out, slowly, and let my fingers hover near his fur. He didn't shy away. Instead, he leaned in, pressing his face against my hand, as if he'd been waiting for that touch. It broke my heart, that little gesture. I stroked him gently, and that was when I noticed the collar. It was a faded blue, but there was no tag. My stomach twisted. He wasn't a stray, at least not originally. He had belonged to someone who, for whatever reason, wasn't there now. I glanced around, looking for anyone who might be searching for him. There was no one. No frantic pet owner, no signs of distress, just the dog, standing by the side of the road, waiting for someone to notice him. For a brief second, I thought about just leaving. Maybe he'd wander back home. Maybe he had escaped. But I knew that wasn't an option. I couldn't just drive away and pretend I hadn't seen him. Something deep inside me told me that if I left him, it might be the last time I ever saw him. So, I did what I felt was right. I opened the door to the back seat of my car, and with a little coaxing, managed to get him inside. I couldn't take him back to my apartment. My landlord had a strict no-pet policy. And honestly, I didn't know how I'd be able to manage a dog, especially one who was probably already traumatized. But I knew there had to be a place for him, somewhere. I turned on the car, thinking of the local shelter. It wasn't too far from where I lived, and they were known for being kind and thoughtful when it came to animals. As I drove, I kept looking in the rearview mirror, watching him. He was quiet, lying down in the back seat, his head resting on the seat cushion. He looked exhausted, as though he had been walking for hours, maybe even days. When we pulled into the shelter's parking lot, I parked in front of the entrance and hesitated. I wasn't sure how to handle this. I wanted to believe that everything would work out, that someone would come forward and claim him. But deep down, I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. This dog had wandered into my life for a reason, and I couldn't just walk away. I got out of the car and walked around to the back, opening the door slowly. The dog didn't move at first, but then, sensing the change in the air, he stood up and stepped out, as if he knew where we were. We walked together towards the entrance, the sound of his paws on the pavement echoing in the otherwise quiet parking lot. Inside the shelter, it was chaos. There were dogs barking in their kennels, and volunteers rushing around, and a few people sitting in the waiting area. A woman behind the counter looked up when she saw us and smiled. But then her smile faded when she noticed the dog. "Oh, my gosh, where did you find him?" she asked, clearly concerned. I explained how I had found him near the park, how I wasn't sure if he had run away or been abandoned. The woman nodded, her expression sympathetic. "He looks like he's been through a lot. I'm glad you brought him here. We'll take good care of him." I stayed for a while, filling out some paperwork, giving my information in case they needed to contact me about him. I wanted to be sure he would be okay, that they would check him for a microchip or any signs of illness. The shelter workers reassured me that they would do everything they could. As I left, I felt a strange emptiness. I had done the right thing, hadn't I? I had saved him from the street, brought him to safety. But a part of me still ached. There was a little dog somewhere in the world, and he didn't know where he belonged. He didn't have a home to go back to, and that reality was harder to accept than I had anticipated. On the way home, I thought about him, about his eyes, the way he had looked at me when I first saw him. I wondered if he would be okay in the shelter. I hoped someone would adopt him soon, that he wouldn't have to stay there too long. But a nagging feeling lingered in the back of my mind. I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to this story. What had happened to him? And who had he belonged to? As I sat in my quiet apartment that night, I couldn't shake the thought of the little dog. What if he wasn't just another lost animal? What if he was meant to be found? I fell asleep thinking about it, knowing that, for now, there was nothing more I could do. The next few days were a blur. I went back to my routine, doing the usual work and errands, but in the back of my mind, the little black and white dog was always there. I couldn't stop thinking about him, his soft, trusting eyes, the way he leaned into my touch. I wondered how he was doing at the shelter. Had anyone come for him? Had someone noticed him, taken an interest, or maybe even claimed him as their own? I called the shelter every day. At first, they told me that he was adjusting well, getting along with the other dogs, and that they had put up a notice in case anyone came looking for him. But each time I asked if there were any updates, I felt that same little spark of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, someone was going to find him and take him home. But the calls started to blur together, and after a few days, I began to wonder if this hope was fading too. The staff mentioned he hadn't been adopted yet, but that wasn't unusual. There were always dogs waiting for a home. Still, I felt this strange weight in my chest. I wanted to know more, to understand more about what had happened to him. But I couldn't quite bring myself to visit the shelter again. The thought of seeing him in that cage, waiting for someone to choose him, was almost unbearable. Then, one morning, I got a phone call that I wasn't expecting. It was from the shelter. "Hello, is this Miss Summers?" the woman asked. "Yes, this is she," I answered, my heart skipping a beat. "We have some news about the dog you brought in last week. We've just checked his microchip." I felt my stomach drop. My mind immediately raced to the possibility that he had been lost and that someone was now coming to claim him. Maybe he had a family who had been searching for him all this time. Maybe his owners had just been too late. I held my breath as I waited for the rest of the sentence. "The dog you brought in. His name is Max. His owner is... well, it's not what we expected." My chest tightened. Max. So, that was his name. The name had been buried somewhere in my mind all week. A detail I hadn't even thought to ask for when I first brought him in. "What do you mean?" "Not what you expected." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "His owner, well, he's no longer with us." The chip traced back to a man named Eric Fletcher, who passed away a few months ago. Apparently, Max was living with him until then. I let out a shaky breath. My mind was spinning. "So, you're telling me that Max has been alone since then?" "Yes," she replied gently. "It seems that after Eric passed away, Max was left to fend for himself. We don't know how he ended up on the street, but we suspect he was just wandering. The neighbor mentioned that they had seen him a few times, but no one knew what happened until you found him." I sank into my chair. The world seemed to stop for a moment as I processed what she was saying. Max had been living with someone who loved him, until that person was gone. He had been left behind, drifting without a purpose, abandoned in a world that had moved on without him. My heart ached for him, and I couldn't help but imagine how lost he must have felt, how scared, how confused. I stayed silent for a moment, unsure of what to say. The woman on the phone seemed to understand my shock, giving me a moment to gather my thoughts. "Miss Summers, I'm so sorry to give you this news. I just wanted to let you know that Max is safe here now. But if you're interested, we could look into fostering him. Or, well, we could also arrange for you to adopt him, if you feel he's a good fit for your home." The words hung in the air. Adopt him. My first instinct was to say no. I hadn't planned on adopting a dog. I had my own life, my own routine. I could barely even keep a plant alive, let alone care for an animal who had gone through something as traumatic as what Max had experienced. But then I thought of him, alone on the street, the way he had looked at me that first time, and my heart softened. I couldn't stop thinking about how much he needed someone. I need some time to think about it," I said finally. "But I'll come by soon to see him." After hanging up, I sat there for a while, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions in my chest. It wasn't like me to make impulsive decisions. But this didn't feel like an impulse. It felt like something deeper, something that had been quietly building ever since I had first seen Max standing on the side of that road. Maybe I was meant to help him. Maybe he was meant to be part of my life. A few hours later, I drove back to the shelter. I still didn't know what I was going to do, but I needed to see him. I needed to know that he was okay, that he wasn't just another lost soul waiting to be forgotten. When I walked into the shelter, the familiar sounds of barking filled the air. The staff greeted me, and I was led to a small, quiet room where Max was waiting. He was curled up on a soft bed in the corner, but as soon as I entered, he jumped up and ran over to me, tail wagging excitedly. His eyes still held that same vulnerability, but now there was something else there, too. Recognition, comfort, maybe even trust. He nuzzled my hand with his nose, and I crouched down to his level. I felt his warm, soft fur under my fingers, and I looked into his eyes. In that moment, it was clear to me. I didn't need to think about it anymore. I knew what I had to do. "I'm not going to leave you, Max," I whispered softly. "You're coming home with me." And that's how it happened. Just like that. A stray dog, who had wandered into my life, turned into a loyal companion who would never again have to worry about being lost or alone. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when Max struggled to adjust, when I wasn't sure I could meet his needs. But together, we figured it out. We built a home, one day at a time. Max was never just another dog to me. He was a reminder that sometimes the things we don't plan for are the things we need most. He had been lost, but now he had found his way back. Back to love, back to safety, back to a home where he would always be wanted. And as for me, well, I had found something too. A new purpose, a new kind of love, and most importantly, a friend who would never leave my side.